is always focused on the enemy, and the player was able to preemptively shoot at the enemy. Now I'm starting to suspect that the player might be cheating. Let's continue watching to see if the player shows more obvious signs of cheating. The player is now playing psychological games with two enemies. It seems like the player is using footstep sounds to tell where the enemies are. The enemy has started to open fire at the player. After briefly hesitating, the player quickly moved out and instantly eliminated both enemies with hip fire. After that, the player pulled the firearm back and eliminated a third enemy. Let's replay those events in slow motion. When the player moved out, the player shot accurately twice from the hip with a rifle, eliminating the farthest player with a headshot. The player then eliminated the closer enemy with wild shots. But in the next instant, the player seemed to know that there was an enemy behind them and instantly turned around to preemptively shoot at the third enemy. Before the enemy had even appeared, this player had already shot it where they were. The bullet was locked onto the enemy and eliminated this last enemy. Based on the above actions, we can basically determine that this player was using the auto-aim and X-ray vision cheats. Well, that's all for this video. Let's continue to crack down on cheating to protect our fair gaming environment. See you next time.
Base Systems Improvements, PUBG Mobile version 1.8 updates. Dear PUBG Mobile players, PUBG Mobile version 1.8 is live. In this video, we like to show you some of the adjustments made to the base systems in the new version. We hope you'll like them. Firearm adjustments. First off, we rebalanced the firearms. In order to improve the game's balance, we slightly increased the MG3's recoil, while the recoil of the M16A4 and MK47 was slightly reduced. This is something we know you'll love. In addition, we found that under different screen resolutions, there'd be some slight variations in the firing, aiming, and recoil values. In PUBG Mobile version 1.8, we have addressed all these issues. Come and experience these changes for yourself. Near-death swimming. Before, when battling with enemies in the water, getting knocked down meant immediate elimination. This isn't really fair, therefore we implemented a new near-death swimming function. Now, no matter whether a knockdown player approaches the water or gets knocked down while in the water, they won't be eliminated right away. They will now enter a swim state. But swimming while injured still needs to be realistic. When knocked down in near death, players' swim speed will be much reduced. Hit marker. Have you ever been at a loss for words when trying to accurately describe the location of an enemy? Everyone would like to notify their teammates of the enemy position right away, but enemies are always laying in ambush while being well hidden. Therefore, we added a hit marker function. Now during fierce battles, you no longer need to spend time marking enemies or trying to describe the enemy location to teammates. You can now focus all your attention on winning. Supply shop. In this update, supply shops have been added to the map. Players can pick up golden coins in the map and use them to purchase supplies and tactical items in the supply shop to arm themselves with what they need most. However, don't forget that you might be a target for enemies camping nearby when you use the supply shop, so be careful before you enter it. Parachuting improvements. We made many tweaks to the flight and parachuting stage. Firstly, tapping the environment during the flight stage will show a light column in the environment. We also added a similar marker function to the map during the flight stage. Bring up the map and tap anywhere to mark it with a light column. When it comes to parachuting out of the plane, things can get complicated. That's why we also added a new auto jump feature. When enabled, players will automatically jump and head towards the marked location. Lastly, in Classic mode, we've added an effect so the names of the main locations display directly above the environment below. This video is only the tip of the iceberg. There are tons of tweaks and adjustments waiting for you to explore and uncover. Invite your friends along for a wild ride. If you want to know more about PUBG Mobile, feel free to follow the official PUBG Mobile community. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. See you next time.
Cracking down on cheating to protect the gaming environment. Hello, I'm an investigator. Today, I'll be reviewing the following player to see if they've cheated in the game. The first player is playing this match in a squad. The destination is Georgiaport, and they picked up equipment quickly after landing. Everything looks normal right now. Let's see what happens later. After the player picked up the equipment, it looks like the player is thinking of engaging the enemy. The first enemy has been discovered. the player aimed and shot the enemy with a UMP-45 and eliminated one enemy. Let's take a look at what happened in slow motion. The crosshair of the firearm is basically on the enemy, so we can't tell if there's been any cheating here. Let's keep watching. The player is moving towards the enemy, but stops suddenly at the corner. There are no enemies in the player's vision, but the player's crosshair is always focused on the enemy, and the player was able to preemptively shoot at the enemy. Now I'm starting to suspect that the player might be cheating. Let's continue watching to see if the player shows more obvious signs of cheating. The player is now playing psychological games with two enemies. It seems like the player is using footstep sounds to tell where the enemies are. The enemy has started to open fire at the player. After briefly hesitating, the player quickly moved out and instantly eliminated both enemies with hip fire. After that, the player pulled the firearm back and eliminated a third enemy. Let's replay those events in slow motion. When the player moved out, the player